The alarm blared inside Captain Gianna Thompson's cockpit as enemy planes targeted her from behind. Her jet's warning systems blazed with alerts. 4 hostile aircraft appeared on the screen, all moving closer, all attacking. She faced too many enemies with no good options, and based on everything she'd learned, she was done for. Falcon 2, you're under attack. Turn right now. Turn right. Her partner's voice shook with fear through the radio. The first rocket flew so near she spotted its burning trail through her window. The second exploded close enough that metal pieces hit her plane's outer shell, making alarm lights flash everywhere on her control panel. She should have escaped. Every part of her screamed to pull the lever and jump out of the failing aircraft. Instead, she grinned. Because Gianna Thompson had waited her whole career for someone to doubt her this much. The enemy thought they'd trapped her. Command thought she was just another flyer who'd gotten lucky during practice. Her own team still whispered that she was a quota higher when they thought she couldn't hear. They were all going to learn a hard lesson. What unfolded in the next 47 minutes would change the rules of air fighting forever. How one pilot switched from defense to attack, from prey to predator, transforming certain death into the most crushing air victory in recent warfare. How she destroyed 8 enemy fighters alone using moves that shouldn't have succeeded but did because she grasped something her enemies did. But before we reveal how she achieved the impossible, drop a comment saying where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button, because this story shows that the most dangerous pilot in the air is often the one everyone doubts. Now let's begin. The meeting room at Al Dhafra Air Base felt heavy with worry. Colonel Marcus Hayes stood up front, pointing to satellite pictures that revealed a hostile airspace disaster. The gathered pilots, 12 of the Air Force's finest, examined the information with different levels of worry. This looks bad, Hayes said directly. Intelligence reports that enemy forces have sent their top fighter group to this area. These aren't ordinary pilots. These are their finest graduates from their advanced program, flying advanced jets with systems that match or beat our ability. Major Derek Blade Carlson, the squadron's star with 17 air victories, relaxed in his seat. With all respect, sir, they're still flying Russian equipment. We've got better jets, better sensors, better stealth, better everything. That overconfidence will kill someone. Hayes shot back. These pilots have practiced specifically to beat our methods. They understand our playbook. They've analyzed every fight we've had for 10 years. Do not take them lightly. In the rear row, Captain Gianna Thompson listened carefully to every word. She was the only woman present, the newest squadron member, and fully aware that most fellow pilots believed she didn't deserve to be there. She'd caught the whispers, noticed the eye rolls when she walked in. Sensed the quiet rejection from the brotherhood that fighter pilots valued above nearly everything else. Thompson, Hayes shouted, breaking her concentration. You're flying backup for Carlson tomorrow. Stay behind him, follow his commands, and please don't try to be a hero. These enemy pilots will destroy you if you break away. Yes, sir, she answered, keeping her tone steady, despite the disrespect dripping from his words. After the meeting, she walked to the hangar where her jet, tail number 327, call sign Falcon 2, sat in its protected shelter. She touched the aircraft's surface, inspecting panels with the kind of care most pilots saved for pre-flight check. Talking to your machine again, diversity hire? She spun around to see Captain Brad Viper Morrison, one of Carlson's crew, smiling mockingly at her. The nickname had followed her since day one in the squadron, a steady reminder that many peers thought she'd only passed training because the Air Force needed to fill quotas. Just checking she's ready, Gianna said calmly. You might try it sometime instead of trusting your ground crew is perfect. Whatever, just try not to get Blade killed tomorrow when you panic under pressure. Some of us actually deserve these cockpits. She watched him leave, then focused back on her aircraft. What none of them realized, what her service file was too secret for them to access, was that Gianna Thompson had more real combat hours than everyone else in the squadron combined. She'd flown missions in dangerous airspace that officially never occurred against enemies that officially didn't exist. She'd scored victories that would never show in any public file. She'd asked for this squadron assignment specifically because she'd heard they were the finest. She wanted to fly with the finest, to prove herself against the finest. Instead, she'd discovered a boys' club that measured value by swagger and dismissed her skills based on gender instead of ability. Tomorrow's mission would shift that balance. She could sense it. The following morning, 6 jets launched into darkness before dawn. Rising through cloud layers toward their patrol zone, Gianna flew in the second spot, holding perfect formation with Carlson's lead aircraft, while the other 4 fighters spread into supporting positions. Falcon flight. This is Overlord. The radar control plane's voice crackled through their headsets. We have contacts at bearing 030, distance 100 miles, multiple hostiles. Count at least 6 targets. Move to intercept, hold fire until they cross the line. Copy Overlord, Carlson confirmed. Falcon flight. Prepare weapons. Hold formation. Let's demonstrate how we operate. They closed distance rapidly. Their advanced systems painted a picture of the enemy formation well before they could see them. 6 advanced Russian jets flying in loose battle spread. Bold, aggressive, seeking combat. They've spotted us, Gianna reported, watching her screens. They're moving to engage. Stay close, Falcon 2, Carlson commanded. We enter together, we exit together. Standard long-range attack. Fire missiles on my signal. But as they reached weapons distance, something felt off. Gianna's gut feeling, sharpened through countless real battles that officially never happened, screamed warnings her thinking mind couldn't quite identify. The enemy formation seemed too relaxed, too calm, like they expected some. Falcon lead, I'm detecting strange radar signals, she called. Possible stealth contacts. Multiple bearing. Falcon 2, keep radio clear. Carlson interrupted her. Focus on the targets we can see. Falcon flight. Firing missiles now. 6 long-range missiles launched from their rails, racing toward the enemy formation at incredible speed. But before impact, the situation exploded into madness. 4 more advanced jets appeared on radar. They'd been flying completely silent, invisible to regular sensors, waiting for the American formation to commit to attack. It was an ambush. Break, break. Someone yelled over the radio as the enemy fighters launched their own missiles. The sky filled with smoke trails and electronic jamming as both sides went fully defensive. Gianna turned hard left as her warning system went crazy. 2 missiles tracking her aircraft. She released metal strips and heat flares while pulling extreme force. The pressure suit squeezed around her legs and body to keep blood flowing to her brain. The first missile took the fake target, exploding harmlessly behind her. The second kept following. Through the chaos, she heard her squadron breaking apart. Carlson fought 3 fighters. Morrison called for help. One of their planes had been hit and smoked. The careful formation had dissolved into a wild fight where individual skill would decide who survived and who died. The second missile still tracked. Gianna rolled upside down and pulled through, watching her height drop as she traded speed for survival. At the final instant, she released flares and jerked the controls hard, forcing the jet through a turn that pushed the aircraft to its limit. The missile couldn't follow, exploding near enough to spray her aircraft with metal fragments, but not close enough to destroy it. Falcon 2 is defensive, she called out, mostly for the radar plane recording the fight. What she didn't mention was that being defensive was exactly where she wanted. 2 enemy jets thought they'd caught her. They dove at her position, confident in their numbers advantage, probably already celebrating the victory. Gianna watched them approach, calculating angles and speeds with the part of her mind that had done this for years in places nobody discussed. She let them close in, nearer than any reasonable pilot would permit, watching their weapon ranges, timing their actions. When the first fighter fired his cannon, she was already reacting, rolling her aircraft through a twisting maneuver that reversed their positions in seconds. Suddenly she sat behind him. Her targeting symbol locked over his aircraft like it was pulled by a magnet. She pressed the trigger and felt the satisfying shake of a heat-seeking missile leaving the rail. The missile covered the short gap in seconds and the enemy jet exploded into flames that she flew through, emerging on the other side to find the second enemy fighter desperately trying to escape. Missile away, target destroyed, she reported steadily as if she hadn't just executed a maneuver that would amaze flight teachers. The second enemy pilot had skill, she'd admit. He immediately went defensive, throwing his aircraft through a series of high-force brakes while releasing countermeasures. But Gianna had been doing this longer against better pilots in aircraft that lacked the advanced sensor fusion and targeting benefit. She remained patient, matching his every action, waiting for the error she knew would come. When he tried to climb, probably hoping to trap her into a stall, she took the opportunity. Another heat-seeking missile. Another explosion. Missile away. Second target destroyed, she called. Falcon 2 is returning to the fight. That's when she heard Carlson's voice, strained with forces and pressure. I'm hit. Ejecting. She looked around quickly, searching visually, and found the smoke trail from his aircraft falling toward the ground. The parachute opened seconds later. He'd escaped, but that meant command of the flight fell to whoever could lead. Falcon Flight, this is Falcon 2. She transmitted, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd done this many times. Reform on me. Defensive stance. We're going to battle our way out systematically. Negative Falcon 2. Morrison interrupted. We're leaving. This fight's finished. Cancel that, Gianna snapped. We've got a pilot down and 6 enemy fighters between us and safety. We fight through or we die. Your choice, Viper. She didn't wait for agreement. 3 enemy fighters moved toward Carlson's location. They'd spotted the parachute and probably called ground forces. Gianna aimed her nose at them and pushed the throttle fully forward, racing to supersonic speed as she closed distance. The lead enemy jet never detected her coming. Her radar operated in stealth mode. Her jet's design characteristics made her nearly invisible until she reached weapons range. Long-range missile from 30 miles out, striking the enemy fighter before he could respond. Target destroyed, she reported, already turning toward the next one. The remaining 2 fighters finally understood the hunter had become prey. They split in opposite directions, standard defensive practice, trying to divide her focus. But Gianna had trained for exactly this situation in secret programs that emphasized attacking multiple targets and making decisions under intense pressure. She targeted the nearer fighter with another long-range missile, then immediately switched to her cannon, firing rounds toward the second target as both enemy pilots tried desperately to dodge. The missile hit the first fighter, tearing its left wing and sending it into an out-of-control spin. The cannon rounds struck the second, walking across its body until something vital exploded and the aircraft broke apart. Targets 4 and 5 destroyed, Gianna transmitted, her voice calm despite her heart pounding at 180 beats per minute. Carlson's position is secure. Falcon 3, your nearest, maintain combat patrol over his location until rescue arrives. Understood, came the reply. One of her squadron members followed her commands now, recognizing she knew her business. But the battle wasn't finished. 3 more advanced enemy jets vectored toward their position, and she heard the radar controller warning of more enemy fighters launching from their base. The situation remained dangerous. Falcon 2, Overlord, the controller called. You face overwhelming numbers. Suggest immediate retreat to friendly airspace. Gianna checked her fuel, her weapons, her aircraft condition. Everything still worked. She'd fired 4 missiles and some cannon rounds, but she still had weapons, and more crucially, she held an edge these enemy pilots didn't know about. She understood how they thought. She'd trained against Russian methods for years. She knew their formations, their communication patterns, their favorite moves. They were skilled, but they were predictable. Overlord, Falcon 2, negative on retreat. I'm gonna occupy them while my flight escapes. Falcon 2, do not engage. You are 1 aircraft against 3 plus reinforcement. Acknowledged. Falcon 2 engaging. She shut off the radio before anyone could command her to stop, then rolled her aircraft and dove toward the ground, accelerating to maximum power as she planned her next action. The 3 enemy jets took the trap, following her down, probably thinking they could overwhelm her with numbers. What they didn't realize was that low altitude, high speed, and confusing radar background was exactly where Gianna Thompson dominated. She'd spent months flying ground-level missions in hostile airspace, threading through mountain passes and city streets while enemy radars hunted for her. These pilots thought they were hunting her. They were mistaken. She leveled at 500 feet, racing over the desert landscape so fast that rocks and sand hills blurred beneath her wings. The enemy fighters followed, spreading out to surround her, blocking her escape paths, standard practice for a 3-on-1 fight. Gianna waited until they committed, until their positions were set, until they believed they'd trapped her. Then she climbed straight up at full power, leaving the desert floor behind in moments. The sudden move confused their targeting systems, buying her 3 vital seconds. She used them perfectly. At the climb's peak, she rolled inverted and locked onto the trailing enemy jet. Heat-seeking missile at close range, guaranteed destruction. The missile seeker tracked the enemy fighter's heat perfectly, and the warhead exploded near enough that the metal fragments shredded the enemy jet's control surfaces. Target 6 destroyed, she called, already diving back toward the ground, using gravity to recover the energy she'd spent climbing. The remaining 2 fighters tried to trap her, one high, one low, hoping to squeeze her between their weapons. Classic Russian tactics. Gianna broke the trap by doing something insane. She flew straight at the lower fighter, closing head-on at a combined speed over 1,400 miles per hour. They played a deadly game for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. The enemy pilot's courage failed first. He turned left, exposing his aircraft's profile. Gianna hit him with cannon fire as she flashed past close enough to see the pilot's helmet in her side vision. Target 7 destroyed, she reported, turning hard to avoid flying through her target's debris field. 1 remained. The final enemy pilot was either courageous or foolish. Gianna couldn't determine which. Instead of fleeing, he pursued her, accepting a one-on-one fight, despite watching her systematically destroy his entire squadron. Maybe he thought he was superior. Maybe he thought he could be the hero. Maybe he just didn't want to return home alone. It didn't matter. They merged at high speed, passing canopy to canopy, close enough that Gianna could see the other pilot's eyes through his helmet. Then the real dogfight started. A twisting, turning, high-force blade fight where instant decisions meant the gap between winning and dying. The enemy pilot was skilled, better than the others. He matched her turn for turn, forcing her to struggle for every edge, never allowing her a clear shot. They lost speed together, spiraling down from 20,000 feet to 10, then 5, then so low that Gianna could see individual sand hills beneath her wings. Her suit squeezed and released rhythmically. Her breathing stayed controlled through clenched teeth, and sweat ran down her face inside her helmet. This was pure flying talent, the kind that separated exceptional pilots from good ones. She tried climbing and diving, but he countered it. She attempted a rolling attack, but he anticipated it. Every trick she knew, he had an answer for. This pilot had studied American methods as carefully as she'd studied Russian ones. So she stopped using American methods. She performed a maneuver she'd learned from an Israeli teacher during a secret exchange program, a combination move that didn't appear in any official doc. She rolled inverted, pulled through while reducing power, then fired the afterburner while rolling upright, creating a brief moment where her aircraft's energy appeared to collapse before suddenly recovering. The enemy pilot took the bait, pulling hard to take advantage of what he thought was her error. But she'd recovered before he could get his nose pointed, and suddenly his aircraft sat in her sights instead of the opposite. Final heat-seeking missile. No errors this time. The missile tracked perfectly, and the enemy jet exploded in a spectacular fireball that lit the desert sky. Target 8 destroyed, Gianna transmitted, her voice rough from the sustained forces. Falcon 2 is out of weapons, returning to base. The radio erupted with messages, radar controllers confirming her victories. Squadron members expressing shock, headquarters demanding a complete tactical review. She ignored most of it, focused on the basic task of flying her damaged aircraft home. The fight had lasted 47 minutes from first shot to last, and she'd just accomplished something that would be studied by air combat specialists for years. She'd destroyed 8 enemy fighters, alone against odds that should have been impossible. When she landed back at Al Dhafra, the entire base seemed to wait on the flight line. As she taxied in, she saw ground crews staring, pilots gathered in clusters, senior officers rushing toward her shelter. She shut down the engines, went through her after-flight checklist with the same careful precision she applied to everything, then opened the canopy. The desert afternoon heat struck her like a physical blow, but it was nothing compared to the heat of all those eyes watching her climb down from her aircraft. She removed her helmet, and her hair, which she kept regulation short, was soaked with sweat. Colonel Hayes reached her first, his face unreadable. "Captain Thompson, report to my office immediately for review. Do not discuss this fight with anyone until we've examined your camera footage and data recordings." "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. But as she walked toward the operations building, she passed Morrison. He stood there staring at her like he'd witnessed a miracle. The cocky smile was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect or might have been fear. She couldn't tell and didn't really care. The review lasted 6 hours. They examined every second of the fight, reviewing her choices, her methods, her weapon use. Senior officers from the Pentagon joined through secure video. Intelligence analysts wanted to know everything about the enemy pilot's skills and tactics. Through it all, Gianna stayed professional, answering questions with the same calm precision she'd shown in the cockpit. Yes, she'd fought against orders. Yes, she'd taken unnecessary risks. Yes, she'd used moves that weren't in the manual. And yes, she'd single-handedly eliminated an entire enemy fighter squadron that had been terrorizing Allied aircraft for months. When it finally ended, Colonel Hayes dismissed everyone else and closed the door, leaving just the two of them in his office. "I owe you an apology," he said direct. "I underestimated you. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment. That was wrong." "Yes, sir, it was," Gianna replied, too tired to soften it. Hayes actually smiled at that. "I've been reading your real service file, the secret one, the one that required a call to the director of operations at the Pentagon to access. You've been flying combat missions for 8 years, real combat in restricted airspace, against equal enemy. You have 43 confirmed victories that don't appear in any public file. You're not some quota hire who got lucky. You're one of the most experienced combat pilots in the entire Air Force. I never claimed I was just a quota hire, sir. Other people claimed that." "Fair point." He leaned back in his chair. "The question is, why are you here? Why request assignment to a regular squadron when you could be flying with elite units that actually value your skills?" Gianna considered her answer carefully. "Because I got tired of working in the shadows. I wanted to fly with regular units, prove that I belonged, show that being a woman didn't mean I couldn't handle a fighter squadron." I thought. She paused, then finished. "Honestly, I thought if I could prove myself here, it might create opportunities for other women who want to do this job." Hayes nodded slowly. "Well, you've certainly proven yourself. The camera footage will be classified, but the fact that you destroyed 8 enemy fighters in one fight is going to leak. You're about to become famous whether you want it or not. I just want to keep flying, sir, and you. But things will be different now. The Air Force will want to use you as a teacher, a guide, maybe even a test pilot for next-generation aircraft. You've shown abilities that very few pilots have." Over the following days, Gianna watched her world transform. The squadron that had rejected her suddenly wanted to be her best friend. Pilots who'd mocked her now hung on every word in briefings. Morrison actually apologized, though she suspected it was more about his career than genuine regret. Carlson, recovered from his ejection with nothing but wounded pride, pulled her aside after a briefing. "I need to say something," he started awkwardly. "I was wrong about you. I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. You saved my life out there. You saved all our lives. And you did it with flying skills I didn't think were possible. Thank you. You would have done the same for me," Gianna replied, though they both knew that probably wasn't accurate. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I will from now on. You've earned that." The official after-action report praised her exceptional flying and tactical thinking under unprecedented combat conditions. The unofficial report, the one that circulated through fighter pilot channels and would be studied at every weapons school, analyzed her tactics in detail, breaking down how she'd turned a numbers disadvantage into a crushing victory. But the most important change came from headquarters. The Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force himself called to offer her a position as a teacher at the weapons school, where she'd train the next generation of fighter pilots in the tactics and techniques that had kept her alive through dozens of combat missions. "We need pilots like you passing on that knowledge," he told her over the secure video call. "Not just the flying skills, but the mindset, the ability to stay calm under pressure, to make decisions in split seconds, to see opportunities where others see only threats. Will you accept?" Gianna thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Yes, sir, on one condition." "Name it." "I still get to fly combat missions when needed. I'm not ready to be just a teacher yet." The Vice Chief smiled. "I think we can arrange that, Captain Thompson, or should I say Major Thompson. Your promotion just came through." 6 months later, Gianna stood before a class of advanced fighter pilots at Nellis Air Force Base. They were the finest of the finest, carefully selected for their skills, their aptitude, their potential, and they all watched her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Good morning," she began. "I'm Major Gianna Thompson, and I'm going to teach you how to survive and win in air combat against equal enemies. Some of you may have heard stories about me. Some of those stories are even accurate. But here's what I want you to grasp from the start. I'm not special because I'm a woman in a fighter cockpit. I'm not special because I destroyed 8 enemy fighters in one fight. I'm special because I never stopped learning, never stopped improving, and never let anyone else's expectations limit what I knew I could accomplish." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation showing camera footage from that fight over the desert. "Let's discuss what really occurred that day, and what you can learn from it. Because the day you stop learning is the day you become predictable, and in air combat, predictable means," as she taught, Gianna realized this was where she belonged. Not proving herself to people who doubted her, not fighting for acceptance from those who would never fully give it, but here, passing on knowledge that would save lives, creating the next generation of pilots who would judge on merit, rather than gender, who would see capability instead of stereotypes. The day's instruction covered everything, from basic fighter maneuvers to complex multiple aircraft engagements. Gianna shared lessons learned in combat, errors she'd made and survived, tactics that worked and ones that failed. Her students absorbed everything, asking sharp questions, challenging her assumptions, proving they deserved the training they received. During a break, one of the students, a young female lieutenant fresh from flight school, approached her hesitantly. "Ma'am, can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead. How did you deal with, when people didn't take you seriously, when they thought you didn't belong? How did you handle that without letting it hurt your performance?" Gianna smiled, remembering her own struggles with the same questions. "I used it as motivation. Every time someone doubted me, every time someone made a comment about quota hires or questioned whether I could handle it, I let that drive me to be better, not to prove them wrong. Their opinions didn't matter, but to prove to myself that I was as good as I believed I was. And if they still don't respect you after you've proven yourself, then that's their problem, not yours. You can't control what other people think or believe. You can only control your actions, your skills, your professionalism. Focus on being the best pilot you can be, and eventually the right people will notice. The ones who don't, they're not worth your energy." The lieutenant nodded, clearly taking the words seriously. "Thank you, ma'am. I needed to hear that." As the student walked away, Gianna reflected on how far she'd traveled. From the secret missions that nobody could know about to the squadron that didn't want her to the fight that had changed everything. She'd gone from being underestimated and dismissed to being recognized as one of the Air Force's top combat pilots. But the real victory wasn't the 8 victories, or the promotion or the respect she'd finally earned. It was knowing that her actions had opened doors for others, that female pilots coming after her would face fewer doubts, fewer stereotypes, fewer assumptions that they couldn't handle the job. She'd changed the conversation not through words or complaints or demands for equality, but through undeniable performance when it mattered most. That evening, back in her quarters, she reviewed footage from the day's training. Her students were skilled, really skilled. Some of them would probably surpass her abilities eventually, and that thought made her smile. That was the whole point of teaching, after all, creating the next generation that would be even better than the current one. Her phone buzzed with a message from Colonel Hayes. "Intelligence confirms that enemy nation has shut down its elite fighter squadron. Too many losses, including the 8 you eliminated. Whatever you accomplished out there, it worked. Well done, Major." Gianna typed a brief reply, then set the phone aside. The mission was finished. The fight was won. But the real work, the work of changing a culture, of proving that capability has no gender, of inspiring the next generation, that work continued every single day. She looked at the photo on her desk, taken after her first solo flight years ago. Young, hopeful, full of dreams about flying fighters and serving her country. That version of herself would be proud of who she'd become, not because of the victories or the recognition, but because she'd stayed true to her principles while adapting to reality's challenges. Tomorrow, she'd be back in the classroom, teaching the next group of pilots how to survive in combat. She'd share her knowledge freely, guide those who wanted to learn, and continue building a legacy that extended beyond her own accomplishments. Because in the end, that was what mattered. Not the individual victories, but the lasting impact. Not the record she'd set, but the paths she'd cleared for others. Not the 8 enemy fighters she'd destroyed, but the hundreds of pilots she'd helped train,
who would go on to protect their country with the skills and mindset she'd passed on to them. Major Gianna Thompson had proven she was one of the best fighter pilots in the world. Now she was dedicated to making sure she wasn't the last. The wolf didn't need to announce itself. Its record spoke loudly enough. And in the skies where life and death were decided in split seconds, that record would echo for generations to come. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories every day.